Hello, everyone. My name is John Sanders. I retired from the military. I did my last 7 years of my career at Fort Hood. I have done 4 deployments to Iraq. And what I'm going to do tonight is I'm going to tell you why Fort Hood has issues. I'm going to outline, I'm going to sit there and say exactly why the issues dealing with communication, work ethics, stuff of that nature, and what I went through the whole time I was at Fort Hood, being in the same unit. And let me start off by saying that I've been sitting here since I was fully retired in 2014, that I've been trying to bring the attention of the public to what's been going on with Fort Hood. With no success, which is not surprising. Soldiers die, there's instant sympathy. But when survivors who've gone through bad experiences at a military post, people have a hard time believing it because they always want to think that the military always does the right thing. And before the first question in your mind comes up, I just want to make sure that my position is very clear. The Army is a great institution. It is. My issues were just with Fort Hood. Before I got to Fort Hood, I'd already done the invasion of Iraq with 3rd Infantry Division, and I had also done a deployment to Iraq again with 2nd Infantry Division. We were pulled out of Korea to go to Iraq, and then from Iraq to Fort Carson. From there, I came down to Fort Hood. The reason why we have issues with Fort Hood is because we have a breakdown in communications and work ethics, and I'm going to explain that, as well as the experiences that I had while I was there. Everybody always talks about the commander is the one that is always responsible. And I see it all through the news websites and everything on Facebook and everything else. Yes, I understand that officers are commissioned through Congress, and everybody sits there and says the buck stops with them. Sure, go ahead and say that. But the deal is, a lot of times, it may not necessarily be the commander that is the issue. We have what is called an NCO support channel. Commanders do the leading. It's the enlisted that takes care of enlisted issues. There is a distinction between those two. If a commander has to sit there and take care of everything all the way down to having to bring the food out to the field for soldiers, a commander would never get no sleep. That is why you have an NCO support channel, a non-commissioned officer. Non-commissioned, which means you're not commissioned through Congress. The thing is, we've been dealing with wars, conflicts, so forth for the last 20 years. We have people that, when it comes times for promotions, you have 2 zones. You have the primary zone. That means they have met the time and grade, time and service to get ready to go to the board for E4 going to E5 or E5 going to E6. E7 on up, that's not my cup of coffee. That deals with Congress, all that good stuff. I'm not even going to go into that. The thing is, you also have what is called a secondary zone, which means you get a waiver. You can attend these boards sooner. Well, when you have 20 years of wars and conflicts, people have a tendency to die while you're in the service of your country. They have to get replaced. That is the reality. So what you're having is about 20 years of people that are getting promoted too fast, too soon, to where they don't learn the scope of their job at each level that they are at. And I'm going to explain this because I want to make sure that civilians understand this. So that way you have a better idea in the scope of this. Now, you have someone that's an E5. They could be a team leader or a squad leader. Team leader means you're in a squad, but you take care of 2 or 3 soldiers. If you're a squad leader, you're taking care of 6 or more soldiers within that squad. Now, team leader can be an E5. Squad leader can be an E5 or an E6. Now, you move up to the platoon sergeant. That means 4 squad leaders, so many team leaders. Platoon sergeant can be an E6 or an E7. They have 4 squads. Now, you're seeing how this goes into a tiered system. Now, moving on up, your first sergeant can be an E7 wearing the E8 rank. They were frocked. I'm not going to get into that, but E8 position is first sergeant. That first sergeant is the senior enlisted NCO for a company, battery, or troop. He is the one that works side by side with the commander. So, and then when you get up, when you're dealing with the unit, battery, company, or troop, don't forget you have battalion right above them. A battalion has 3, 4, 5 of those units, which means that at battalion level, you're going to have an E9 that's senior enlisted, and that would be your command sergeant major. The command sergeant major works side by side with the battalion commander, who is a lieutenant colonel. Now, I'm not wanting to lose y'all right now, but you're seeing how things are progressing up the chain for NCO support channel. Like I said, everybody is sitting here and wanting to have the commanders responsible when things are happening to soldiers on the enlisted side of the house. I just explained the NCO support channel. Now, remember what I said about getting promoted too fast, too soon. You're going to see exactly what I mean because I'm going to start going into my story and explaining how things are going. And before I do that, now imagine you're a team leader. If you can't sit there and take care of those 3 or 4 soldiers on their issues, that means the squad leader can consider them weak and replace them. Well, there's no pressure on that, is there? If the platoon sergeant doesn't think a squad leader is handling their position, the platoon sergeant will replace the squad leader. So the squad leader is saying, I need to handle my soldiers' problems, or I'm going to look weak. This might reflect on my next NCOER evaluation. Basically, in a civilian job, it's like your once a year review to see if you get a pay raise or not in job performance. That's what an NCOER is. So if team leaders are feeling the stress, If the squad leaders are feeling the stress, if the platoon sergeant is feeling the stress, if the first sergeant is feeling the stress, because don't forget, he's got a sergeant major above him, and don't forget, he works alongside the commander. Commander is going to be looking at him. There's a lot of pressure there. So sometimes when soldiers have issues, it doesn't make it as far up the chain as it should, or it's not articulated correctly, because it's like you putting 4 or 5 people in a row in a squad formation. You whisper in one person's ear an exact sentence. Now, that next person is supposed to say that exact sentence to the next person, and then to the next person, and then to the next person, and then to the next person. Let me tell you how that exercise ends. 20 years in the military. Trust me, I know this one. By the time that original message gets to the last person, it's going to be a completely different sentence. Because everybody takes the information given to them, process it, figure out how they're going to say it to the next person. Each and every person is individual and different. That's just the way it works. Now, we have what it's called a NCO Creed. NCO Creed is like a military version of a Bible. For those of you that are religious or people that know of religion, you want to know about your Lord, your Savior. How do you want to learn? How do you want to learn about it? You read a book. That's what you do. You read a book. Well, Non-Commissioned Officer's Creed is basically one sheet of paper. And it outlines what the duties are and what the NCO is charged with doing for a daily basis. It is a way of conducting business. I will sit here and give an example. I know my soldiers, and I will always place their needs above my own. Well, that don't seem to happen at Fort Hood. It seems like the NCOs are thinking about their careers and their next NCOERs. So is that possible amnesia? No. Now, I sat there and covered that. The next part of the Non-Commissioned Officer's Creed that seems to be violated and absent while at Fort Hood is, I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. Uh-oh. Going back and thinking about my next NCOER. Yeah, I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. Now is where I start my journey of educating y'all of why we have the issues at Fort Hood. You're getting a sample, and I suggest you continue watching this because, yeah, I'm the reason why 382FA, Field Artillery Unit, was deactivated, became 3-16FA, and less than a year later, 9 soldiers died in a drowning. Well, it seems like burying a unit, reflagging it, I don't know if they thought that was going to solve toxic leadership, but 2 out of 3. Yeah, I don't think they want to reflag again for number 3 because I think it's still going to, I don't think it's going to solve the problems. Hopefully I have your attention now. So I already told you I'd already done 2 deployments. I did the invasion of Iraq with 3rd Infantry Division, which, let me tell you something, going straight into a war zone at the very beginning, not fun. Also, with 2nd Infantry Division, straight from Korea, we landed in Iraq, and that was a very, very, very hard tour. Our brigade lost quite a few people, and it wasn't because of people's incompetence. It's just The enemy was very good at what they were doing. So here it is. It's August of 2005. I arrive in 382FA. The first day that I arrive in 382FA, I get told that they're doing a health and welfare in the barracks. Now, for those of you that don't understand what a health and welfare is, that means that the chain of command is going to go through the barracks of the soldiers, the soldiers that are living in the barracks. They're going to go through the barracks. They're going to check it. You got two types of inspections. One is a white glove inspection where they'll check for even dust on the blinds. And then you have your general, which means they just want to see how are you generally living. Remember what I said about being promoted too fast, too soon? A lot of those general inspections turn out to be white glove inspections because they go in, that's the first thing they go for is for the blinds. They swipe the blinds and they say this is dirty and blah, 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 blah. And I'll sit there and look at the senior enlisted, or I'll look at the commander and say, I thought we were doing a general inspection. You're doing what is called a white glove inspection. To which I am sat there and told, we will conduct it how we see fit. That seems to be a normal standard answer when you question your leadership. So that means every NCO goes down to the barracks, ones that don't have duties that are going to interfere. Staff duty still goes on, all that good stuff, so they can't be down. But all other NCOs will go down to the barracks to check on their soldiers. So I went down there and come to find out, not only is this going to be an inspection for health and welfare, but they had the MPs there and they had dogs there. Drug dog. One drug dog. Drug sniffing dog. And it was the older type barracks to where there's a door at the end of the corridor. You open it up, you go in, there's doors to rooms that are on the left and the right. That's how these ones were set up. They eventually demolished those buildings because they were getting pretty old. Well, the dog goes in and automatically sits at one door, which means that they sense that there's drugs. So me being one of the first ones going through the door, I had to stand guard for that room. So that way the soldier can't go in, can't go out, can't move nothing until the investigators come. Now, remember what I told you about breakdown in communication and all that good stuff? Well, it turns out that this soldier belonged to Alpha. Well, I belong to HHB. My battery, otherwise known as a company, okay, Free Civilians Company, my battery was HHB, headquarters and headquarters battery. Well, this was an Alpha battery, soldier's room. So here comes this Alpha First Sergeant, which now I have the curse of Alpha 382. There was never a single first sergeant in Alpha 382 that ever liked me from start to finish in those 7 years. And the first thing he does is he goes and decides to chew me out. Oh, your soldier's got drugs, blah, 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 blah. What have you got to say for yourself? And I let him go because I'm going to be nice, not interrupt. When he got done, I looked at the door just to make sure. And yeah, plain as day, Alpha. All right, so I look at the Alpha First Sergeant and says, well, I'm HHB. This is my first day with this unit, my first working day. You're the Alpha First Sergeant. That's the Alpha room. Get one of your Alpha NCOs because I'm out of here. I'm done and I'm gone. Needless to say, I didn't realize my HHB First Sergeant was behind him. And the reason why I know it's my HHB First Sergeant when I finally seen the view is because as a non-commissioned officer, start familiarizing yourself with names of people that have rank in your unit. Now, mind you, this is my First day. Now, don't get me wrong. I'd already done my in processing. Okay, I've left that out. Don't need to go over that. I already done my in processing. This was first official day of work, and my first sergeant looks at the Alpha first sergeant and says, "Sergeant Sanders is right. You need to get one of your NCOs." Now, here's where the problem is. You're a first sergeant, and you don't even know the NCOs in your own unit. That should be the very first red flag that I should have sat there and thought of, and I didn't. But it should be a red flag to all of y'all. Think about it. If this battery first sergeant does not know the name of his NCOs, how are we supposed to be able to effectively communicate and articulate needs through the NCO support channel? That was the first red flag. Yeah. So, I mean, we're moving on. Okay. It was a health and welfare, and turns out some people got caught up with drugs. Okay. No unit is perfect. No unit is perfect. And I'm going to tell you that. If you have people sitting there claiming that their unit is perfect, please tell me that, and I'm going to sit there and laugh. But some units do have more issues than others. All right, so we're going to move on. Next, we had a field exercise that came up. And remember what I said about communication. Well, we did not have, I was communications, and we didn't have enough people in our shop. And the reason being is we were still waiting for replacement personnel to come in. So instead of having two separate contact teams, one for each line battery, Alpha and Bravo, there was only me. Once again, let's get into the communication aspects. Well, my boss, civilians, boss, E6s that were running the commo shop, my superiors for my S6 section, failed to inform Alpha that me and the two soldiers I had would be going back and forth while we're in that field exercise, going back and forth between Alpha and Bravo to make sure their stuff was working. It's our job for unit level maintenance for commo. Well, Alpha didn't get that memo. So one morning we pull up to Alpha because we'd already been at Bravo for the night. We would go to Bravo at night, check their issues. We would be with Alpha during the day. That is how I set it. Take initiative, non-commissioned officers, so I set the initiative. The Alpha Battery First Sergeant Commander thought that me and my team were going back and sleeping in the comfort of our beds at night because we would pull up every morning and leave every night. Remember what I was saying about communication? It was really sucking. So now we're going to continue this on. We sat there, got done with that exercise, whatever. And my job, when it came to the field, after that, I didn't want to really deal with the unit on their field exercises anymore. So I talked to the head NCO for my section. I says, look, I know you have a retrans every time that you go out in the field. It's supposed to be an NCO and two soldiers, and you're on a mountaintop. Well, they call it mountains in Texas. Let me tell you something. In Pennsylvania, these are called hills. But anyways, continuing on. I says, look, you have it where it's an NCO, two soldiers stuck on a mountaintop, because basically what happens is radios can't talk through a mountain. Just like you having a cell phone inside a building and you're getting bad reception. It's the same principle. Well, let me just leave it at that. So what I do is I sit on top of the mountain. Signal comes from one side of the mountain, comes into my radio, goes out the other radio to the other side of the mountain. In order to make a complete circuit of everybody being able to talk to each other. So I made it where, from that time forward, me and 2 soldiers, being completely bored, sit on top of a mountain. Peaceful. Now, you'll have some people that'll sit there, and as I've found out on Facebook, you'll have people sit there and say, "Oh, you are a substandard NCO," so of course they threw you out in the middle of nowhere because they didn't want to deal with you. Let me tell you something, people. You are not going to take a person that is not reliable, give them 2 soldiers, and put them in the middle of nowhere. That would be the dumbest decision ever made. I don't think Fort Hood could reach that level. And Fort Hood has definitely reached some level of stupidity. And I'm going to be honest with that. Now, from there, dealing with those field exercises, I'm going to go ahead and skip a little bit forward. One of the problems that I was having when I came to Fort Hood was my promotion packet. Remember, I told you, you go to the board to go from E4 to E5, and then E5 to E6. Well, while I was with 2nd Infantry Division, I went to the board to go from E5 to E6. So my promotion packet for that board got mismailed to 4th Infantry Division, which was on the other side of Fort Hood. Now, my S1, so I don't have to go later down the line and tell you everything, during the whole time I was in that unit, trying to get my combat action badge from 2nd Infantry Division, I had to do that myself. The unit awards, the Presidential Unit Citation and the Navy Unit Commendation Award for unit, both of those I had to go to us.armyhistory.mil and pull the actual orders and submit them to S1 because S1 didn't want to do no work. And I'm going to be honest with you, S1 was the most useless entity I ever dealt with while at Fort Hood. So let's see, I covered the Combat Action Badge, the Presidential Unit Citation, and the Navy Unit Commendation for Unit Awards. Okay, I covered that. Oh, yes, and the invasion of Iraq, for some reason, when I was with 3rd Infantry Division, the deployment time, the complete deployment time for that invasion was not on my enlisted records brief either. Luckily, I kept a copy of my orders. Because, again, S1 was too lazy to call 3rd Infantry Division to confirm my deployment times. If you're hearing a little frustration in my voice, we haven't even started yet. And I want to make that clear. Now, going back to where, okay, dealing with retrans. Now we're going to gear up for a deployment. Now, I've already told you that issues that get brought up may not make it all the way up to the commander. Well, came to Fort Hood, tried to do 30 days leave to see my Korean wife, and then they asked me 30 days later, why are you trying to go to Korea for 30 days? Are you telling me my NCO support channel didn't tell you that I had a wife in Korea? Interesting. So I go on my first deployment with 1st Cav Division. It's my 3rd deployment, but it's my first one with 1st Cav. So where we land at, there was this old generator, civilian generator. We didn't think that sucker was grounded. And I'm going to be honest with you. Didn't think that sucker was grounded. I'm not no expert. But I didn't stay at a Holiday Inn and learn, how to be an electrician by reading a manual in a Holiday Inn room. But what I do have is I was trained for my MOS of communications, and one of the things that we have to learn is grounding radio systems. I always learn to have a good ground. We can never see a ground for that generator. Now, during the same time period, and I'm going to refer back to 3rd Infantry when I was with them, with the unit I was with. Sometimes when you're communications, when it comes to ordering parts, everybody likes to pass the buck when it comes to ordering parts. For instance, go through the motor pool to order your parts. They'll tell you to go to your company, Battery or Troop, go through their supply to order parts. Then you go to them and they say, well, yes, you're on the property books being assigned to this company, but you need to go through S4, a battalion, to order your parts. And the next thing you know, if you really take a good look at that, you're getting into a big circle with those three. And you're getting absolutely nowhere in ordering parts. Well, and another deal, so you're dealing with frustration of trying to order parts. And I'm going to get into this on that deployment. We also had where we had a chief, a warrant officer, that used to like to be a pack rat. He loved sitting there ordering brand new tools and everything for his maintenance guys. Well, our battalion commander at that time took all the commo people that were of my specific MOS. Notice how I'm not going to say it on this site here, but people that were in my MOS for unit level maintenance for communications. That's the only clue you're going to get. And put them on combat patrols. We had like 21 or 24 combat patrols. That's 4 vehicles per patrol times 21 to 24 combat patrols. And there's only 2 people of that MOS that would maintain those. Me and the other person, which was my E7 at that time, we didn't get very much sleep during that deployment. Battalion commander, for that deployment, thank you for the lack of sleep, because you did not feel that you did not feel that you had to sit there and do your research to figure out what was the most efficient way of deploying your assets. Just like when we're back at Fort Hood and doing our training, the unit would set up at the base of a mountain in a valley for their communications. And I've already told you, radios don't communicate through radios. Radios do not communicate through mountains. Okay, it just doesn't work. You need to move out into the open a little bit. But S6 was never really taken. Communications was never really taken seriously by that field artillery unit. So they never really took a lot of input from us, which at times would hinder our effectiveness of being able to do our job. Now, I'm not even finished. We're just getting started in this. Trust me. So, you have my NCO that is above me. Like I said, only 2 people that maintain those combat patrols. We're trying to order headsets. Now, anybody that has sat there and done ordering, we're going to know when something is ordered or canceled when it comes to those requests. We're not stupid. If you've been in the Army more than a day, you know how to check on the progress, on the status of what you order. And what was happening was we'd sit here and order 15, 20 headsets at a time. And we'd look and we'd see that it was on order. We'd see that it come in, but we weren't receiving them. So where are they going? Well, it turns out this chief, Warrant Officer 3, and I'm not going to name his name, what he was doing is he had these storage rooms, and he would stack everything in there, and he would hoard all this stuff. And what I had to do was after about the 5th or 6th time, and my E7 telling me, well, Chief's holding on to him. I says, you know what? I don't look like I'm the sharpest tool in the shed. I understand. I don't look it. This is what I'm going to do, E7. I'm going to drop my intelligence by 100 points. And I'm going to go down there and I'm going to get you those headsets. Now, he had already talked to the guy several times and wasn't getting nowhere. So I had to play the psychological game. So I went down there. I says, Chief, we're really hurt. We need these headsets. We really need them. I mean, can you hook us up? I mean, I'd be forever grateful, and I'd owe you one, Chief. Yes, I had to drop my intelligence that far. That was a headache. So Chief sits there, and his ego is getting stroked. He's starting to feel needed and good and everything. Sure, Sergeant Sanders, just come with me. Come with me. I got you. And we went in the storage room, and he gave me 3 big brown bags, plastic bags, hefties, of headsets. And let me tell you something, 3 big bags worth, and I'm sitting there carrying them. I'm a short little guy. The bags were about an inch off the ground as I held all 3 bags, going like this and going back to my shop, which was on the 3rd floor. Yeah, the E7 didn't believe that I could pull it off, and then he sees me come through the door. I should have bet him some money on that one. But here we go. We're getting more deep into this now. Remember what I told you what the warrant officer was doing? Well, at the same time, rumor. I'm going to say rumor. And the reason why I say rumor is it's always a rumor unless you have the paperwork to prove differently. And I don't have the paperwork. But apparently the battalion commander's cook set for that time period was more important. All the chief's tools for his maintenance people was more important. But I guess flame retardant materials for the fuelers who are fueling these generators, I guess that wasn't a priority. It wasn't a priority. There's nothing like walking into your shop, having to get already got your coffee for the morning, you go into your shop, you're in a good mood. And you hear screaming outside your 3rd floor window, where, what did I tell you, that civilian old generator. Well, apparently, one of the females that was refueling the generator, as soon as she put the nozzle and it made contact on the hole to pour fuel into a reservoir, it caught fire. It caught fire. It took her 60 days to die. Her supervisor, which was standing a couple feet away, at the refuel truck, his stomach got burned. He was the one I heard, not her. To this day, I still have a lot of resentment. And there's still days I wake up and I hear that scream. Are we starting to see our issues now? So from there, rest of that deployment, I'm getting a lack of sleep. I'm edgy. And I'm not happy. Well, remember what I said, and it was on this first deployment with CAF, my 3rd deployment overall. Well, when you don't add points to your promotion packet, 3 years after you last added your points, you fall off the promotion list. And you have to go back to the board again because you failed to add points in a timely manner. So I got called to the Sergeant Major's office with my E7. This guy chews me out. Oh, you're lazy, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. You're saying, oh, you're going to have to get reboarded and everything. What do you have to say for yourself? Blah, 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 blah. I waited till he got done. I says, you know what, Sergeant Major? You are absolutely correct. If I failed to add points, then I'd have to go back to the board again. But I'm not going back to the board again because it wasn't my fault. And I have a binder full of awards and education that I have done since the last time I added points. But your S1 didn't think it was a priority to call 4th ID to their S1 to get my promotion packet brought to 382 and for me to add points. Now, my temper is slowly going up, but it wasn't going up with the sergeant major, but internally I'm going up. Because during these whole 3 years, and it's still pretty much the start of this Iraq war, my points had dropped for promotion. They were going back up. So the end result is the sergeant major saying to S1, restamp it as current, because if we send him to the board, he's not going to pass it. Now, for you civilians, when it comes to these promotion boards, most of the time the sergeant major is the ranking member of the board, followed by first sergeants and E7s on that panel. What I was being told, remember what I said, I'm listening to what's being said, is this sergeant major is saying that I will not pass the board. And here's why I would not pass that board. And the reason why he sat there and he told S1 to go ahead and restamp it as current. The problem is, with the attitude that I have of not taking no nonsense, get the job done, get it right, be safe about it. If you sit there and you always take care of your soldiers, you always get the job done, and you are efficient and it's done in a timely manner, and safety has been at the forefront of your mind. If you are a combat MOS, if you are a field artillery person for this unit, and you have those qualities that I just gave you, you would be sent to the board as soon as possible because you have natural leadership ability, promote ahead of peers. But if you are a support MOS person, you're considered a troublemaker, need to be counseled, and you need to be busted. Okay, maybe I need to change my MOS to be a combat MOS, maybe? No, I'm going to stick with combo. So the end result is they sat there and they restamped the packet and they made it current. But by this time, my points are going back up. You're not going to win. And I didn't win. So we're going to keep going on this. Now, I've already sat here and explained, sitting here communication-wise, and now I'm showing you biases that are within the unit. All right, so we get back from the deployment. I already told you about that one person that died because it had an old ancient generator that probably had never been maintained. So we come back, 2008. Don't really remember too much about 2008. Not really. I think it might have been one of my better years. I ain't got nothing to complain about, so it must have been. Once again, doing retrans out in the field and being away from everybody. Loved it. Now we're getting ready to go for our deployment for 2009. This will be my second one with 1st Cav 382 FA. This is my second deployment with them. This is my 4th deployment overall. Well, we got some new people in. We got 2 E6s in. And let me tell you something. I was more trained than they were when it came to actually doing the physical part of the jobs. Paperwork, they might have me on. I was never much of a paperwork person. But you got a stubborn radio or a stubborn piece of equipment that's not working, I'm going to find out what that problem is in 3 minutes or less, and I have proven that. When brigade would need a retrans for the field and we were in the field, brigade would rely on me to do their retrans because they knew I was reliable. When we were on deployments, other units would come to my unit because they had heard of my reputation. Any unit that was attached to the brigade, for like PSYOPs or whatever, they would come to us because they heard of my reputation. Yes, I was that good when it came to troubleshooting and fixing equipment because I loved doing my job. As I told the E7 for the section, you handle the meetings. I will run behind the scenes behind you. I'm the guy that nobody ever sees, and I will make sure that whatever needs to get done and inventory and everything else, I will make sure to get that done. It was a trade-off. It's called being very efficient in handling day-to-day operations. So he could do the meetings, I could do everything else. And it worked great. But when it came to people that were outside our section, all they saw was me being a troublemaker because I would put my foot down. E7's not there. I'm putting my foot down. Okay, I'm the troublemaker, but I'm saying exactly what the E7 would say. But truth be told, that E7 was tall enough to be an NBA player. I'd have to look up to him. I would get neck cramps because I'm a short midget, and I'd have to look up to him every time I talked to him. They would not give him attitude, but they would give me attitude all the time. Now, we're going to keep going. Like I told you, we got 2 E6s that came in, NCOs. Well, we go on this deployment for 2009. The 1 E6, he was Hispanic, lived in Mexico for a long time. He graduated high school in Mexico. He had no communication barriers. No, he could speak English extremely well, better than this redneck. And I'm being honest. Well, he really, when things would get to a point where he had to do meetings and deal with everybody in the section, and if it was all at once, he could not handle it. He really could not. Notice how I'm acting like I'm having a case of hives right now. It's a very uncomfortable chapter that I'm getting into. He could not handle the job. He couldn't. The other E6, he was a white guy. He made my life miserable. I'm not going to lie. Miserable. And the reason why I say miserable is because I think he really resented the fact that I could sit there and troubleshoot a problem in 3 minutes or less, where it'd take him a half hour. I guess he didn't like that. He'd always call me names. He'd belittle me. He'd ridicule me. All the way to a point that one night the whole section, including the SIGO, which is your signal officer, that's the head of the S6 section, we were all sitting down eating one night, pizza, I remember as well. And that E6 sat there and made a very bad joke. I could have had so many Inspector General complaints on this guy, it wouldn't even be funny. And everybody at the table just stopped. And they looked at me because they thought for sure, because they knew my temperament, of I could sit there and take it all day long, but you come across the wrong way at the wrong time and you hit the right button, we're going to have it. Did he hit it? Yes, he did. And I just sat there, looked at him and said, I'm going to eat my meal. And that's all there is to it. He was so miserable in his own life that he had to make my life miserable in order to feel like he had meaning in his life. That's how bad it was. Now, we're getting into the good part. And you're going to love this. At the same time, we sat there and we got this new E8 in. E8. Master Sergeant, if they are the senior enlisted for a company battery troop, they would be First Sergeant. Master Sergeant, First Sergeant, same rank. Well, he came to us when we were deployed in 2009. He had already done his time in a line unit for field artillery. He'd already done his time as a first sergeant. So he becomes our ops sergeant major. Remember, you can be one rank lower and hold that. It looks good on your NCOERs. He complained that he wanted one of my soldiers' weapons. He wanted one of the newer M4s. My soldier cleaned it, got it to him. My soldier got the old ancient weapon. Guy comes back a day later, complains that my soldier didn't clean the weapon good enough. My soldier's from Mississippi. He knows how to handle weapons, and I know for a fact he cleaned that weapon very well. Should have been my first red flag with this guy. And I'm not going to give his name, but I'm going to say exactly. I'm going to give you the perfect examples as to why Fort Hood has issues, because what happened to me is happening a lot throughout that whole post. All right. So we got the guy, red flags, don't like him, but I don't have to associate with him, so I'm not worried about it. Boy, was I wrong later down the line. So we come back from that deployment. Now, after we come back from that deployment, what did I tell you when I'm at Fort Hood? What is my job? I am retrans. I'm sitting on a mountain. Well, when you are an ops sergeant major for a unit, one of your areas of responsibility is the command center out in the field. Otherwise known as a TOC. You military ones know it as a TOC, Task Organization Center. Okay, civilians, Command and Control Center. All right, I want to make sure everybody understands what this is. This is the hub where all the higher ups meet and all the lower enlisted sit there and say, I don't want to be here, we're moving out. Okay? Let's make sure we got that. Now, with that being said, we came back from that deployment. That E8 had already done his time as a first sergeant. He was in the ops sergeant major's position, which that's a good thing for us. And so we are. Okay. It's a good thing. And we have our first field exercise, and I'm doing my retrains. Well, after about 2-3 days, I'm trying to figure out what's going on because our unit should be dealing with our gunnery. And I'm going to leave it at our gunnery training area. We had the battalion executive officer come up on my mountain. Remember, Pennsylvania, it would be considered hills. And he says, why is your retrains down? I says, what do you mean? Well, I'm being told your retrains is down. Now take note, people. This is where my problems started. So I show the battalion executive officer that mine is working. I have the first radio on our local command net. Radio check, they can hear us. Put it on standby, do the same thing with the second radio, put it on standby. Third radio, do the same thing. It works. Okay, put them all back on the frequencies that they need to be. Because of OPSEC, I'm not going to tell you what those frequencies are. Now, I get done and I convince 100%, you might as well say 150%. I overkill it. Proved to him that my stuff was working for communications. I asked him if he wanted me to come down to fix his. He says, yes, if you can come down to the talk and fix the issues, I'd greatly appreciate it. So I came down there, and it took me over 2 hours to fix all the communication problems. One of them being at the bottom of a mountain in a valley. What did I say? They don't like to listen to S6 when it comes to input. That was one, not all. There was about 12 to 15 different problems. Well, we had a first sergeant that was leaving out for HHB. Who am I assigned to in that battalion? I'm assigned to HHB. We come out of that, right when we come out of the field problem, he became, that E8 got put out of that position of Ops Sergeant Major, became the first sergeant for me, for HHB. A slap in the face, and it's not even a line unit, it's the pencil pusher unit, HHB, the admin. Not good. Now, I'm going to back up just a little bit. The thing is when it came, before it came to that field exercise, my E7 was leaving. He went from E1 to E7 in the same unit, and he was leaving out for a new duty assignment. We had, remember how I told you about this Hispanic E6 that we had? He was taking over. He couldn't do his job. He couldn't keep anybody in the loop. Now, I'm under him as far as rank. I'm the senior E5 for the whole entire section. There's times I go up to battalion where he is at, because remember, he's supposed to be doing all these meetings because that's his job. That's not my job. That's his job. And he can't tell me what's going on a daily basis, but he can get on a government computer, be on Craigslist all day long, looking for parts for his Harley motorcycle. Well, it got to a point, I mean, we're dealing with months after we came back from deployment. Months after that 2009 deployment. Okay? That I'm going through this stress, and all the soldiers are looking at me like, are you the idiot? They're thinking I'm the idiot because I'm running interference, trying not to show that the E6 doesn't know what he's doing. Because I'm supposed to support my NCOs that are above me, beside me, or under me. And yes, corporal is an E4. This is not working out. Well, one of the problems that we had was I had CQ. That means I'm in the barracks for 24 hours, making sure the soldiers are not sitting there and acting like they're in college dorms and having parties and underage girls and everything else in the barracks. It's my job to make sure everything is peaceful and we don't have Van Wilder's movie of togas and beer and everything all over. That's the job of CQ, maintain the peace. Not necessarily get into those soldiers because they need to relax because the barracks is theirs and they should have a place to relax when the workday is done. Well, I had CQ on Monday. I was off Tuesday. Came in for PT on Wednesday. Monday, Tuesday, yeah. Working Monday, off Tuesday. I come in Wednesday for PT and nothing is ever said to me. The E6 never said nothing to me. And we do PT and everything is great. Hey, everything good? Everything's good. Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Let's rewind just a little bit. On Monday, we have what's called motor pool stables. That means you go down to the motor pool. It's mandatory. And people are supposed to sit there and look at their vehicles, make sure there's no flat tires, no class 2, class 3 leak for transmission and oil pans, and make sure your batteries are not dead. Make sure your vehicle works in working order. If not, gets annotated on some paperwork, gets turned into maintenance, and maintenance fixes it. Now, what did I tell you? That's on Mondays. It's Wednesday. And I've already had it up to here with the Z6 for several months. I get a call at 9:30. Can't remember 9 or 9:30. It's been a couple of years, people. Well, he's yelling and screaming at me on the phone. Well, not screaming. The first phone call, he wasn't screaming. Go to the motor pool. We got a vehicle that has to go down to one of these locations to be worked on for some reason. OPSEC, not going to tell you what it is. I was like, okay, no problem. I got you. I'm going to go down. Well, I'll be down there in the motor pool within minutes to get this done. I go to the motor pool. The vehicle has a flat tire. You can tell it because it's leaning. It has a class 2 or class 3 leak for transmission and oil pan. And it has a fuel leak. And the batteries are dead. This vehicle is not going to move at all. Now, mind you, my wife has been watching me slowly see my hair turning gray for months because of all the stress that I'm going through. So I call up the Hispanic E6. I says, look, man, there's nobody down here for maintenance to be able to work on this vehicle. You're saying to get it down there in less than half an hour, and it ain't going to happen. I don't have the ability. He starts yelling and screaming at me. I mean, he is going at it. I snapped. I'm done. I threw my phone on the ground and broke it into hundreds of pieces. After I sat there and told him, I'm done. I'm going home. Just go ahead and do the paperwork to separate me out of the service because I deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, and I have not got none of that from you. For 3 days, I stayed at home. Everybody thought I was joking. I stayed home for 3 days. Wife looked at me and says, are we playing this game? I says, oh, absolutely. Yes, we are. Because I really want to throttle that E6, and I don't know if I'm going to allow him to keep enough air in his lungs. So, the chain of command comes out. We talk. I go back to work. That chain of command for HHB, that commander and that first sergeant, they were not going to take any actions against me because they knew that E6 had issues. Then we had that field problem. Now, I told you we were going back a little bit. Now we're going back forward. Told you we had that field exercise and where that ops sergeant major did not live up to his responsibilities of maintaining the talk for his communications. We come out of the field. He now becomes my first sergeant. What do you think is the first thing he does as soon as he becomes my first sergeant? He goes through my Smith 201 file. That means a file in the unit's orderly room that's kept for each soldier, dealing with counselings, negative counselings, and so forth. Well, his very first day on the job, he went through my file and proceeded to process an Article 15 against me. What was that Article 15 for? What'd I tell you? Those 3 days I stayed at home. That was under the previous command that I had. Do I have your attention now? Do I have your attention? Remember what I said. I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety, which is in the non-commissioned officer's creed. I will remember what I also said. I know my soldiers, and I will always place their needs above my own. Nope, that didn't happen. Now did it? So I have an Article 15 leveraged against me that the former command did not leverage against me. Well, this guy being put back down to first sergeant again, he set me up again. I'm not used to having to watch my own back, watch people trying to stab me. That's not the way I live my life. I have values. I have morals. I have principles. Strict, firm, fair. That's the way it's supposed to be. Now, getting back to this. So it's now time for me to go down to TDS, Trial Defense Services. Remember, I told you this first sergeant set me up. First sergeant, I'm told to go up to the orderly room to go see the first sergeant. I go and I see the first sergeant. Yes, you're going to be going down to Trial Defense Services, Sergeant Sanders, and here's your packet. And you can take it yourself because you're a non-commissioned officer. That's the first part of prosecutorial misconduct. Doesn't matter if you're an NCO or not, there's supposed to be another NCO with you. Now, I'm not stupid. I'm not the sharpest tool in the shed, but I'm not stupid either. But I was stupid enough to take the packet and go down there by myself at that time. Now, there was another soldier that also had to go to Trial Defense Services, a soldier, so he was escorted by an E6. I'm not going to be using names. Well, when I got down to Trial Defense Services, there's a line out the door. That's normal. You'd be surprised at how many people have Article 15s. Get into that later. I noticed that he was down there with that soldier. I was like, oh, hey, how's it going? I'm going to open this up, make sure, my packet is complete. I want you to, look at it as well. And he's like, okay, so Sergeant Sanders, I got you. Well, I open it up. There's only one sheet of paper, one counseling with my name on it. The other two is for the soldier that he's escorting. I'm like, this is not complete. Okay, here's two counselings that are belonging to your soldier. Is there anything in there that is mine? No, Sergeant Sanders, there's nothing in here. So I go back to the company and I tell the first sergeant this packet is not complete. And the first thing he says is you have tampered with the packet. You have tried to destroy evidence and you're going to get leveraged another Article 15. What? And to this day, you just noticed that the look I had on my face, that's exactly the look I had. Deer in headlights. Deer in headlights. Oh, we have copies of that paperwork, and we'll get you another Article 15. And I sat there, and I grew a big boy voice, made sure people heard me. I said, First Sergeant, I've been in the service for more than a day, and I'm wearing stripes, and I know everybody has a 201 file, and I know that you didn't give me the original copies of the counselings to go down to Trial Defense Services, because a first sergeant would know to make copies of the 201 file of the counselings, and you would give a copy to go down to Trial Defense Services. So in case something happens to the packet, you would have a copy, you would have the originals. I know you too well, First Sergeant. I know you always have a backup to a backup. So why would I try to destroy counselings in my own packet? Well, I wasn't. He was setting me up. That's number one of prosecutorial misconduct, dealing with an Article 15. Now, I went back down to Trial Defense Services once everything was straightened out, still with a threat of another Article 15 pending. So I finally see my Trial Defense Service lawyer, a captain, who could not meet height and weight. I'm just telling you. Bald, overweight, nice expensive watch. And the reason why I know it's a nice expensive watch is because he kept looking at it to see if it was 11:30 so he could get out the door so he can stuff his face at the nearest buffet that he can find in a 20-mile radius. He opens my packet, glances for probably 17 seconds if I'm lucky, closes it, looks at me and says, "Take it." I says, "What do you mean take it? Let's discuss here. What have we got for options?" "No, just take it and be done with it. Have a nice day." Wow, that's Trial Defense Services? This is where you take all your rejected JAG lawyers and throw them to? Because I know for a fact that when it comes to brigades, the legal lawyer they have, they meet height and weight, and they're very knowledgeable. I know that for a fact. I know that for a fact. Okay, so I go back down, return the packet, obviously been seen by Trial Defense Services. Now comes the time to where I'm being read my Article 15. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, and you need to actually watch this. So I go in, I see the commander, and the first sergeant's with him, which I'm not understanding why the first sergeant would want to be there, but okay, not a problem. There's nothing that says that first sergeant can't be there. There's nothing that says he can't be. I understand. Well, at the end of reading the Article 15, at the end of it, the commander asks you if there is anything else that you want to say. Now, this is a time between you and the commander, no one else. Because the commander is the commissioned officer. He is commissioned through Congress. He is the one that's actually the leadership position, known as your chain of command. Remember, first sergeant is NCO support channel. He has responsibilities. He's not command. He has responsibilities. Now, before I can sit there and tell the commander what I think is a mitigating circumstance or get off my chest or whatever it is at that time, the first sergeant says, "This is what's acceptable. This is what's acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is acceptable. This is not acceptable. This is acceptable. This is," and I look at him like he's lost his ever-loving mind. Notice how I just paused right there. Now, and the reason why I was looking at him like he lost his ever-loving mind, because now we're entering prosecutorial misconduct again. The time is between me and the commander. The first sergeant can't sit there and say what is and is not acceptable. He is not in command. And I tell him, literally, you can't do that. This is between me and the commander, not you. He says, "Oh, yes, I'm like a district attorney. I can sit here and say this and this and this." And he's puffing his chest out and everything. And I'm looking at it. Now, the commander could have told him to leave. The commander didn't tell him to leave. So I look at the commander and says, "Can you have him step out for a minute?" Commander sat there and told him to leave for a couple minutes. And I told him, I was like, everything this guy has done up to this point is wrong. And I said exactly why it was wrong. And this is the reply that I got from my commander. He is my first sergeant. I have to have faith in him, and he has to have faith in me. And I'm sorry, I'm going to take my word. I'm going to take his word over yours any day. Remember what I said about communication, that we have a breakdown in the NCO support channel. Now, as you're seeing with what I was going through, there was a complete breakdown because of one person that sat there and used his grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, and personal safety. That sat there and violated, I know my soldiers and always place their needs above my own. I was subordinate to the first sergeant. This is what we have dealing with Fort Hood, people. With each rank, you should be able to look up to the person that is a rank above you, and you should learn from their example. And should be able to be mentored by the people that are above them in rank. No, everybody runs. Everybody scatters. Everybody fears the next rank and try to stay away from them. That is why we're having those issues at Fort Hood. Because everybody's trying to run away. Everybody's trying to sit there and think about their own careers, their next NCOERs, and all that good stuff. Now, so I didn't get no pay taken. I didn't get no rank taken. But I had to serve half of my Article 15 for extra duty, which means working extra hours up at battalion, supervising soldiers that were serving their Article 15s. In other words, supervise them when they cut the grass, clean the bathrooms, whatever. That was my job. Now, Commander enforced Article 15, even though there was 2 counts of prosecutorial misconduct that I sat there and pointed out. I'm not happy. And I had also said after it concluded that I've been trying to get behavioral health, which is right behind Darnall, the old Darnall people. Talking about back then, not now. The first thing the first sergeant says, we've been back for so long and no, you haven't, and you're trying to use that as a cop-out. No. The behavior health that is behind Darnall, let's put it this way. If you are going to hurt someone, or if you are going to hurt yourself, you can be seen. But if you're not doing either one of those, good luck trying to get in that door. I needed to be numb and dumb. Now, I'd already been taking medications on and off for years, and I have not disclosed that to y'all throughout this because, to me, it's a personal matter. I was dealing with PTSD. People saying that there's no stigma against PTSD while serving. Yeah, okay, no stigma whatsoever. So I'm sitting there and I finally get behavioral health. The guy's listening. Now, I've had several years of dealing with psychiatrists at the behavioral health. If it was a psychiatrist, it was a psychologist. If it wasn't a psychologist, it was a counselor. Or I had a combination of all of them. Don't ask me to be specific on every one of those because too much time has gone by. But eventually, I sat there and I agreed to go ahead and do the med board process because this guy was trying everything to bust me down and force me out so that I would have no benefits at all. You have to sit there and say, am I going to fight every which way and get justification and have this person held responsible for what they're doing? Or is it going to backfire and I'm going to continue getting the brunt of it and I'm going to lose everything I have? So I submitted to the med board. The doctor was waiting for me to say it. He'd already had it ready on his computer. He just said, what took you so long? He knew I wasn't the problem just by listening to my conversations. He sees so many different patients. He could tell who's lying to him and who's not. He knows people's mannerisms. He knew that I was straight up with everything that I was saying. So I'm now in the med board process. With that, I am now thrown in what they call them. Basically, they called it a med board platoon up there at battalion. And basically, this is like Hogan's Heroes. For you old people out there, Hogan's Heroes. Remember that movie? Well, We're talking about people that had drug offenses, AWOLers, and all that good stuff. I'm putting in that platoon because I'm now in the med board process. Now, dealing with the Article 15, because I just realized I kind of went a little bit out of whack on this. While serving that half of that Article 15, I was given severe sedation medications, which is including Ambien. I totaled my car right there, right beside the battalion and in front of 2nd Brigade headquarters, 1st Cav, because I had a lack of sleep, which included, on top of all the other sedation meds. I totaled my car. Commander sat there, took my temporary profile and said, nope, I'm putting it off. Can you say bad combination? Blackout, total your car. What happened with totaling the car? I'm just going to be brief about it. My family was with me, and I had no knowledge that I sat there, put the car in reverse, and climbed up a pole. I have no knowledge of this. I don't, because I blacked out. But basically what happened is went down to the MP station the next day. They were going to throw it, child endangerment charges and everything, until I sat there, put my medications on the table, sat there, put my profile on the table, and said, how do we want to handle this? MPs didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. Well, we already have this entered in the system, but you know what? We're going to reduce this down to $110 moving violation, and you have a very nice day, Sergeant Sanders. Goodbye. The reason why they did that was because I had the medications showing that I was on severe sedation medications. I had the profile that sat there and said, look, requirement is so many hours sleep a day while adjusting these medications. And the commander, who had absolutely no medical training whatsoever in the field of psychology or dealing with meds in general, decided to put my profile off to the side and say, no, I'm going to disregard it. Now we can move forward. Kind of realized I messed up on that by timelines. But now fast forward, I entered the med board process. I'm now in this platoon. Now, while I'm in this platoon, again, profiles. Notice I keep saying this. I had a profile of no more than 8 hours of work a day. The unit, they were sitting there and saying 7:30 to 9 o'clock, that's your personal time. That don't count towards those 8 hours. When it comes to 11:30 to 1 o'clock, that's also personal time. That doesn't count to 8 hours. And so no matter how you look at it, you're going to still be here till 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I'd sit there and say, look, that'd be 12 hours. No, it's not, because you had personal time in between. Wrong. But that's what we were dealing with. Now, it got to a point where they sat there and they put me as platoon sergeant for the med board platoon. Now, dealing with the med board platoon, we are dealing with some soldiers that hate everybody. They don't like the officers, they don't like the NCOs, and they make it very, very, very well known. Now, remember how I told you people are getting promoted too fast, too soon at each rank that they have. So by the time they get up there to be first sergeant and all that, they don't know the scope of their duties, and they don't know how to do it in a professional manner because they did not learn the scope of their jobs at each level they had, because they were getting promoted as soon as possible at each and every single rank. This is coming into play now. Pay attention, because I'm only going over it once. So I get put in charge of the med board platoon for my unit. We have this big guy. I mean big guy. And he has the worst attitude. He hates officers, but he hates NCOs even more because he had to work with NCOs more. He's my biggest obstacle. And he kept giving me attitude and kept giving me attitude and giving me attitude. Let me tell you how today's NCOs, well, the NCOs back then were doing it compared to me. They would sit there and put the soldiers in front leaning rest or whatever type of exercise they wanted and sit there and berate those soldiers is what they would do. Just out of sheer frustration. Well, if you're always berating the soldiers, if you're always looking out for your NCOER, and you're not sitting there and helping the soldiers, and these problems are getting worse and worse, the end result is there's going to be a total breakdown of that NCO support channel. The unit cohesion and the effectiveness of the unit goes down majorly. Well, difference between them and me. Yes, I'm an NCO, but that don't mean that I conduct NCO business the same way as all the others. If you get promoted too fast, too soon, yes, you know how to recite and memorize the non-commissioned officer's creed. Yeah, you can do it backwards and forwards and all that good stuff and saying exactly what it says. But here's the thing when it comes to that non-commissioned officer's creed. When you read that non-commissioned officer's creed, can you interpret what it's conveying? Can you analyze, interpret, and properly execute how to use that non-commissioned officer's creed? Like when I sat there and said, I know my soldiers and I will always place their needs above my own. Do you know what that is? Or are you just sitting there and reciting it and you never really apply that? And that's why all those soldiers are having problems with you. I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. In other words, you're not going to do things that are only going to benefit you, and it's going to mess up everybody else underneath you and throw them under a bus. But again, are you realizing that because you can interpret what it's saying, or are you just memorizing it and it's just going across your face, but you're not able to apply it because you couldn't interpret it? That's what I'm trying to say. Going back to religion, you want to learn about your God, you read about it, you learn to analyze what is written so that you can understand it, interpret it, and apply it to your daily life. Well, that's what that non-commissioned officer's creed is. That is what that officer's oath is. But anybody can sit there and read a Bible and tell you exactly word for word what it exactly says, but do they know how to use it in everyday life? I can tell you a lot of religious people don't know, but they can sit there and quote scripture all day long. Now, and I'm going to keep going. So, back to that platoon. And I told you I had that big guy that hated every NCO worse than he did the officers. I let him keep going, I'm analyzing him. Day number 4, he's sitting there, he's giving an attitude, he's trying to make a reputation for himself in the platoon. So, I sit there, I look at him, sat there, I put everybody at rest. In other words, they can move everything but their right foot when they're in formation. And I sat there and I told him, I says, look, soldier, you and I both get out of bed every single day. We both put our pants on the same way every morning, or at least I hope so, because if there's another way of putting the pants on to get them in the areas that you need to get it, I'd like to learn that one. Respect is a two-way street. You earn it by giving it. Now, the bully, big boy, the bully that's leading this uprising in that platoon gets quiet. Everybody else gets quiet. I'm not having any more issues. And it's not just for that day. I literally did not have no issues for the rest of the time I had that platoon. And the next thing that happened is the rear detachment, which now I'm getting into rear detachment. Remember that E8? I told you that became my first sergeant. Well, he's deployed forward. We're going to get into that in a minute. So I have this platoon under control. The rear D first sergeant commander says that I need to be taking care of their issues. I need to make sure that I take care of those issues. Notice how I said that. I'm supposed to make sure their issues are taken care of. Reason being, First sergeant commander don't want to deal with them because they're not getting no respect from those people in that platoon that are getting chaptered, ETSing, court-martialing. They're not getting no respect from them. They don't want to deal with them. So they tell me what details need to be done. I get them done. Now, I will tell you how effective my leadership was as a non-commissioned officer. Something happened to where one of the soldiers got beat up so bad that one eye was severely closed up, several ribs, probably stress fractured, and he's limping. We had baggage detail. OPSEC, I'm not going to say exactly everything, but we had baggage detail, and I knew he was pretty messed up, and he was on quarters. He came to do the baggage detail. It wasn't going to take no for an answer because he was loyal to me. He respected me as a non-commissioned officer. And I had to tell that poor boy several times to sit down on the curb and not to pick up a single bag. Several times. Because he was showing that he had respect for me and we were underhanded. And he was going to work through his pain to get the job done to help me out. Gets better. Now I'm going to take a break from this for 1 second on that. Now I'm dealing with that first sergeant. I told you that first sergeant got deployed. Now, mind you, I'm on rear detachment while the unit is deployed forward. Well, when your NCOER comes up, oh, notice I'm breaking out in hives again, remembering this. Once a year, you have your evaluation. Well, the thing is the E7 that was in charge of my commo section now had no rated time with me, so therefore not authorized to sign my NCOER. Well, that E8 that I told you about sat there. My last 3 NCOERs in the military were the worst ones I ever got, just letting you know they were. Why? You can figure it out. So what happened is this first sergeant sat there, did my NCOER while on that deployment, and told the E7 for the S6 section that you will sign this NCOER or we will remember yours when yours comes due. Now remember what I said, always watching out for your own NCOER. Remember that, people. I have nothing against that E7. In fact, that E7 for that S6 section at that time was the one that personally told me that when he got back from deployment. That E8 forced him to sign that NCOER. Now, when that NCOER gets signed, now I sat there and I saw it. It came in. I said, no, I'm on rear detachment. It needs to be NCOs that's on this rear detachment that do my NCOER, not the unit that's deployed forward. Nope, didn't happen. First sergeant got his way. Now, when you don't sign that NCOER, you're supposed to be told when it's going to be sent up and have 30 days because that is an HRC requirement. No one told me when the unit decided to send that NCOER up to HRC, which is a violation of regulations. So now we got that out of the way. You see everything this first sergeant is doing, right? So back to that platoon. Now, one of the soldiers was getting court-martialed at a unit level. Well, his defense lawyer wasn't there today at a court-martial because of the simple fact that the defense lawyer was on leave. I've already told you about my car accident while on severe sedation medications. That's where I'm going to play a little bit later when it comes to medications. Keyword, medications. Well, anyways, so this soldier that's in my med board platoon is going all off. I mean, he leaves that little courtroom that they made for the unit for his court martial. He's outside. He's going off. He's yelling. He's screaming. He's running around. He's walking around in circles and everything. And these other NCOs are just looking at him, and we have the rear D commander for our unit out there. I says, all right, sir, I got this. Not a problem. He turns and he looks at me and he says, no, you don't. I said, excuse me, sir? Well, you've been sitting here and doing all this work, so people are saying that you're fraternizing with these soldiers. Notice how mad I am just sitting here talking about this. Imagine how mad I was that day. So let me get this right. You tell me to take care of all the, and I told him too. I said, so let me get this straight. You told me to take care of all their problems, take charge of the platoon. I've done one heck of a job. They work as a unit, as a team to get everything done. Is efficient. And now you're going to say that I'm fraternizing because you in the First Sergeant can't get no respect from Hogan's Heroes. And you're not going to allow me to go and calm that soldier down because they have no respect for you. Do you know he respects me and the platoon respects me? That you're going to be pissed off that I can calm him down and not you. Sir, you're wearing officer's rank. I really wish I could have a lot to say on that, but I'm not going to. Eventually, I'm the one that calmed the soldier down. But see, here's the thing. If that happened to that soldier when it came to a court-martial, how many other soldiers got bad conduct discharges because regulations weren't followed when it came time for that? I mean, think about it. There's people that had PTSD after doing several tours, and you're giving them dishonorable discharges when it should be a medical retirement for them because of psychological reasons. But see, here's the thing, and I know it real well. The whole time that a soldier is in a med board process, they are taking up a slot in the unit. So until that person is actually out of the unit, they can't get a replacement in. So it's quicker to sit there and do court martials and throw them out as fast as possible in order to get a new person in to replace them. Whereas dealing with a med board and doing everything right by regulations can take you, well, at least during my time frame, it can take up to a year to get that person out to get another one in. Because until they are off the books, you can't get another one in. All right, now, moving forward. Dealing with the profiles I told you about that they wanted to disregard. I already told you how they were saying from 7:30 to 9 o'clock is personal time, 11:30 to 1 is personal time. Well, I did not know that the Rear D Sergeant Major for Brigade was standing behind me when I'm sitting there and having my time with the Rear D First Sergeant of my unit. And I was saying it was wrong and blah, blah, blah. I mean, there was an E6, an old E6 on rear detachment who had heart condition problems. And they were making him pull 24-hour staff duty, even though his profile said, no. Can't even pull half of that time. And this guy was taking nitro for his heart. Are we seeing a pattern here dealing with profiles, people? Well, anyways, back to the conversation. So I'm sitting there telling this first sergeant, no. I find out that the Rear D Sergeant Major for Brigade is behind me. I got a job for you, Sergeant Sanders. I seriously thought things were going to end. Now, turns out the next day I got put in charge of the mailroom, and I'll get into it in a minute. Now, before the unit actually deployed forward for their operation, and that E8 sitting there signing that NCVR while they were still in the States before they left for that deployment, I had my packet submitted for WTB. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. Fourth one, I said, don't even bother because I was already close to being out the door as it was. For those of you not understanding what I'm trying to say, Warrior Transition Unit. It's where you get taken out of your unit, you go into these specialized units because you're in the med board process, a little bit easier to deal with. Well, the purpose of Brigade is to check the completeness of those packets for people trying to get into WTB or WTU. Same thing. WTB, WTU, same thing. Well, I sat there, and after the second time, I'm still not getting anything back. So I went to Ombudsman at Darnall, figuring out, okay, go through Ombudsman, let them sit there, kick up a fire, figure out what's going on. Well, Ombudsman has the ability to go into the database to check to see whose name has been submitted for WTB. And it's known as the triad. That means the hospital commander, the WTB commander, and I think the third one is your brigade commander, I think. But basically, the triad sits down, goes through each of these WTB packets of soldiers that are trying to get in WTB and figure out who will go and who won't. That's why I'm known as triad. Well, the problem is my name was not being submitted for WTB. It was not going through. They would check into the database. Ombudsman would check into the database, and my name wasn't there. So the third time it happens, I actually have my commander, the one I told you had served me the Article 15. I said, sir, I need you for a couple of minutes. Can we go to brigade and figure out where my packet is for WTB? Now, this guy wants me gone. He wants me gone. So, of course, he's going to go with me. And what it turned out to be is you go into the basement. You went into the basement of where brigade was at the time, and there's this little Dilbert dungeon cubicle where this captain is at that goes through the packets to check for completeness. No deployed time. Meanwhile, I have a combat action badge. I have a combat patch. Well, I asked, why is my packet not being forwarded up? I mean, it's complete. Why is it not being forwarded up? And he sat there and says, you know what? The people that are at behavioral health just rubber stamp saying going to WTB. Someone who's never deployed, sitting there and saying that everything I went through on my deployments, my packet is being stamped to go to WTB. That's really funny. No, not really. So what was happening was the 2nd Brigade, 1st Cav was holding the packets. The reason why they were holding the packets is because when the unit deploys forward and you have your rear detachment, there is still different details that come down from higher saying cut grass, post police, ammo detail, whatever. So if you can keep on sandbagging those packets for WTB/WTU, if you can keep sandbagging them and not forwarding them up past brigade, then that means you get to keep the most people on rear detachment. And that's exactly what they did. Meanwhile, I'm dealing with an abusive unit. I'm dealing with a toxic unit. Now, it gets better. So, I'm dealing with the brigade mailroom that has failed its inspections like for 13 times in a row. But anyways, I'm now further away from the unit. I'm in a brigade mailroom. So, no big deal. Well, I sat there and I tried to do leave. I got so much leave time saved up. So I asked my rear D commander, can I take leave? And what's his response? No, because only warfighters have a right to take leave. Well, I got time that I need to burn off. Only warfighters have a right to go and take leave because they've earned it. I says, oh, really, sir? How many deployments you got? I got 4 deployments to Iraq. I have a combat action badge. And I think your chest is a little bare because I don't see no combat action badge or combat infantry badge or a medical combat badge. I don't see none of that. He was not in a good mood that day. But I wasn't able to take leave because I wasn't a warfighter. 4 deployments and a combat action badge, and I'm not a warfighter, and I haven't earned a right to take leave. I'm trying to process right now. So yeah, we had that. Now it gets even better, people. No. This is not the end of it. I hope you know this is not the end just yet. I'm taking you all the way to the time of when I am finally out, and then I will have another video from that time forward. On probably tomorrow. So. Not able to take leave and everything. I got so much leave saved up. Well, the thing about it is dealing with my Pueblo. Remember, I'm dealing with the MedBoard process. MedBoard process got extended because, was it Fort Lewis, Washington, I believe, is where all the packets for psychiatric, figuring out for the Army what to give you for disability ratings. They were taking a lot of PTSD and downgrading them to 10% for adjustment disorder, and they were caught doing that to a lot of people that they weren't doing that, supposed to be doing that for. Mine wasn't one of them. There was clear cut, mine was PTSD, no doubt, because I've had documentation all the way back to 2004. Anyways, let's keep moving forward. So, okay, so I'm over a year in the med board process, literally. Well, okay, when it comes towards the end, Pueblo sending the packet up to transition, where you get your DD-214. Hey! Anyways, so my time is running down when I'm going to be out, but I'm not knowing it because between the Pueblo getting it and sending it to transition, I think there's like 100 days somewhere in there. Well, the problem is the person that was up at transition claimed that they didn't have my number, and I'm under 60 days of being able to take leave. The unit's not going to extend me because why? They want to get another person in. Transition is not going to extend me. But I have 92.5 days of leave. I had already lost 22 days of use or lose the year prior, and I had already cashed in 60 days of leave before that when I did my last re-enlistment. That first cav taxed when I was in a combat zone when I re-enlisted. I'm not supposed to do that. But my Hispanic E6 re-enlisted a day or two after me in that combat zone. His didn't get taxed. So, needless to say, I lost days, and I medically retired as an E6 because I was an E5 promotable. And remember, I told you how I'd lost the ability of getting my promotions. So I medically retired as an E6 because I was E5 promotable at the time. And yes, there is articles that I'll sit there and tell you per regs because you're E5P, or if you were an E4P to E5, you would retire as an E5 because you were promotable. So, I lost all 92.5 days. I also lost 22 days the year prior to use or lose. No, I did not get no retirement award. No, didn't get none of that. Now, this is where the part that I'm stopping at this point. I'm not dealing with past when I left the Army because I was on temporary retirement for another 2 years, which I'll get on which I will tell you in another video, probably tomorrow. But what I want to do is go back. This is not just me that was having these issues. N3 2FA. Having my car totaled because I blacked out from a lack of sleep but told to take meds, which, by the way, by the time I did retire from the Army in 2012 for temporary retirement, I had a whole bag of years worth of meds because of fear of taking those meds and a lack of sleep that I was going to have the same problem again. They say no stigma about PTSD. Say that you can always get help, but yet they retaliate. So you got to think, meds and accidents or no meds, suck it up to stay safe. I mean, we had a family fun day and they said it was mandatory and I had a behavioral health appointment. I had to sneak away from mandatory fun day at the 3 Corps building because literally right across from the 3 Corps building is the behavioral health building, and behind the behavioral health building is the old Darnell now, the old Darnell. I had to sneak away because if I didn't do that, then it would be reported to brigade that I did not attend my appointment, and then brigade will call down a battalion commander. Battalion commander will say, I will make sure this NCO gets a counseling. And then my commander will sit there and say, I have no knowledge of this. Yes, you will counsel Sergeant Sanders for this. No, I wasn't playing that game. But those are the games that Fort Hood plays. Are you understanding this? Don't attend the meeting because you're at a mandatory fun day at 3 Corps and their little trails and all that, because that's where the unit wanted to have it. But if you don't attend, brigade gets told, and then it pushes down, and everybody's all mad, and then they take it out on you because you didn't you didn't go to the appointment, but yet they are the same ones that told you that you couldn't go to the appointment. My Hispanic E6 beat his wife twice, and she came to my house because they lived less than a mile and a half down the road. What did the unit do? Nothing to him. But a white E5 at another unit within 382 knocked out his bipolar wife, who is documented bipolar, came at him with a knife. He got reduced down to E4 before family advocacy ruled that it was self-defense because he was being attacked with a knife. Then he sits there and does a verbal appeal for the brigade commander, and the brigade commander is saying, ain't got time to hear your appeal. I never once saw him have his rank back. There's other soldiers whose profiles were being violated and would have minor fender benders because they would be dozing off behind the wheel because of the meds they were on, but the hours they had to pull. And being told, oh, no, I'm going to put your profile aside because it's a temporary profile. So you're going to have like a sleep, but keep on taking your meds. No, there is no stigma towards PTSD. No, not at all. Extreme sarcasm is used for this video. It's funny. When you need the actual help, you're considered a liability. And I was ostracized. As soon as that E8 started going after me because he got moved out of the op sergeant major and became my first sergeant, I was being ostracized. All the other NCOs and officers that would normally talk to me on a daily basis scattered to the four winds because they figured that if they could continue talking to me and he would notice this, that they would have fallout from it. I knew an E7 that was getting ready to retire, and he didn't want to have nothing to me because he was trying to coast out to retirement. And he stopped talking to me. I'm ostracized from everybody else. I got an E8 that is abusing his position, and I'm not able to get the medical help. Well, actually, trying to get the medical help, halfway decently getting it, but I'm not able to take the meds and follows the doctors and being able to follow the doctor's orders. There's something wrong with that. And here's the thing. I've sat here and told you about the NCO support channel. I've told you about the chain of command. I've told you how at each step of the way, somewhere along that chain, and I gave you an example, wind tunnel, go back, wind tunnel, that the information may not be going from the lowest to the highest. So you sit there and say it's the commander's fault, but the commander may not be getting all the information. If he even gets the information about whatever it is that's wrong with them in that unit for a specific soldier. Now, I've sat here and told you what is going on and how people are having to watch their back, watch their own NCOs. The culture is what we need to change. How do we change this culture? We need to go back to the basics. And I'm going to explain this clearly because I am not a retired non-commissioned officer that says to complain all the time and say do better and not give you the tools you need in order to make it better. I want to make sure that's known. And here's how here is what I think needs to happen. Everybody keeps saying rules and regulations, keep putting out more policy letters and this and this and this. You can put them out all day long. But if commanders are using certain regs, but then telling the soldiers when those soldiers use those same regs that they can't use them, that's where we start to have our problems. When you start making it a one-way street. That's problem number one. Problem number two. Stop making it where you're telling these people to memorize the non-commissioned officer's creed as the only requirement in order to be sitting there and going to the boards. Okay? We need to change how we do these boards, going from E4 to E5 and E5 to E6. And it's very simple. It's very simple. And I'm going to explain it to you. What we need to do, dealing with the basics, is this is what we need to do. Right now, we have the soldier's creed. We have the NCO creed, which both sides are enlisted side of the house. And then you have the officer's oath. Well, here's the thing. All of those, stop trying to only memorize them. We need to have it where soldiers, E1 to E4, yes, understand, learn the Soldier's Creed, I got it. But they need to learn the NCO Creed, because sooner or later, you're going to go from a follower to a leader. You just don't get E5 rank and magically go from a follower to a leader. That is where our first breakdown begins, people. You don't immediately go from a follower to a leader. It does not work that way. And this is how I'm going to suggest we do it. Make those lower enlisted E1 to E4, learn that non-commissioned officer's creed. And what I mean is, yes, I understand it's part of tradition to recite the whole entire NCO creed from memory. I'm not saying to change that history. I endorse that. But what I'm saying is make it where each month or even each week, what I'm saying, don't jam it, is each line of that non-commissioned officer's creed. Have it where you engage your soldiers. You be that mentor at each level. E9, mentor to E8s. E8s, mentor to E7s. The E7s, mentor to E6s. The E6s, mentor to E5s. The E5s, mentor to E4s. The E4s to the E3s. The E3s to the E2s. The E2s to E1s. Mentor. Not fear and intimidation that we have at Fort Hood that has existed well before I got there in 2005. And in that mentoring, learn the non-commissioned officer's creed. And each week or month, okay, no one is more professional than I. Tell me, what does that mean? How did you interpret that? Can you tell me what it means? No one is more professional than I. Oh, yes, no one is more professional than I means that I am of a high caliber professionalism. I learn to separate between personal life at home and I can separate professional life at work. I don't bring work home. I don't bring home to work. Okay. I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. What does that mean? Can you tell me what that means? And have them and sit there and engage back and forth in a mentorship of giving knowledge and experience to teach the younger generation that's coming up through the ranks until that whole NCO creed is done. Then you sit there and say, recite the whole NCO creed after all these weeks or months, that they can recite that NCO creed from start to finish, and then sit there, put the NCO creed right in front of them and say, I want you to explain in your own words what each of these lines mean to interpret, to apply, in order to interpret and apply. Because right now, at Fort Hood, you have a lot of people that are wearing stripes, but they're not non-commissioned officers. They're getting that pay, but they don't know the scope of their job because what I said, promoted too fast, too soon, didn't learn their position at each level that they had. And they can recite that non-commissioned officer's creed, but they can't tell you what it means. And that is the basis right there. They can recite the non-commissioned officer's creed, but they can't tell you what it means. There it is. Everybody's saying, Commander, the buck stops with the commander and all that for chain of command. Why isn't anybody talking about the NCO support channel? You start at the lowest and build all the way up. Because you are only as strong. A unit is only as strong as its weakest link. But if every turn people are sitting there and trying to stab each other to get to that next position for their NCOER and throwing everybody else underneath the bus, why do you think we have the incidences that we have? Now, I've tried to sit here and tell local news stations here in Central Texas, 3 of them, as a matter of fact, 3 of them, since 2014. I retired in 2012. It became permanent in 2014. Told you, next video. But since 2014, I've been there, sitting there, and telling these local news stations, I can tell you what's going on. I can tell you what's wrong. I can tell you how we can fix this. And you know what? Not a single news organization, not even CNN, no one has reached out to me when I've sat there and reached out to them and saying, here, I have the experience to tell you what's wrong and how it can be fixed. I'm not doing this for my 15 minutes of fame. No. I wanted to make a difference for all those after I retired so they didn't go through what I had to go through and have a year's worth of psychiatric meds in a bag when I retired. I wanted the ability to save lives, future lives, for making a difference for them. And all I got was silence. And each year, exponentially, things have gotten worse and worse and worse before it did. And it's not on my conscience. It's on those local news stations. Now, that's it for tonight. I'm going on 2 hours. I hope someone sits here and takes this and learns from it. I'll look at the comments. You got questions, I'll address it in the next video if I have to. You got to start somewhere. Starting somewhere means if you sit here and you say sympathy for all the soldiers that are dying when they're dead, why is it when I've been trying to say since 2014, why do I have people coming out left and right, sitting there bashing me, ridiculing, making fun of me, not believing me? Respect for the dead, but give total disrespect for those who survive what goes on at Fort Hood. Think about that. Why is it that way? Why is it survivors are the ones that get the brunt of ridicule? Think about that before the next video.